Hi, everyone. So today I want to talk about some interesting things that came up for me on my walk. And I guess it revolves around the idea of power, exactly what is power and how we use it. So was trained as a conventional doctor. And for me, power was all about the use of drugs, surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy. This was powerful interventions that somehow we needed to do in order to treat diseases. So that's where I came from. For me, you needed to have power if you really wanted to get anywhere. So when I started, so I gave up medicine for 5 years, and when I came back into medicine and decided to become a non-drug doctor, I had to look around for other things that could work. And one of the things that I learned very, very early on in my practice was acupuncture. And that totally, that was amazing. I mean, putting one needle sometimes in the body, released a painful condition that had been there for months, weeks, years even sometimes. One of the most successful areas that I treated were back pain. I could almost guarantee that 85% of people with serious back pain that have been going on for quite a long time would have their pain relieved even after one treatment sometimes, certainly by 2 or 3 treatments. There was one lady who couldn't lie down in bed anymore because of her back pain. All she could do was sleep in a chair. And she'd had that for how many years, I can't remember. And yeah, in that case, I know that we did at least 20 treatments, but well, after 20 treatments, she was lying in bed again, sleeping like a little baby. So acupuncture, just putting needles in the body, was able to, and it's not powerful. And then very soon after that, I learned about using a low energy laser. And lasers medical doctors use high-powered lasers, like 50 watts, can burn a hole through the body. High-powered lasers can burn holes through steel, cut wood, but that's 50 watts. My first laser was 1 milliwatt. 1 milliwatt. You can't feel anything. It's so low-powered. And yet that low-powered was able to do the same thing that needles could do. I was using these lasers as instead of needles in children, for example, and getting the same results as the needle. So on the one hand, people could feel the needle going in, and I would twirl it even sometimes. With the laser, they couldn't feel anything, and yet I was still getting results. So you could say, acupuncture is all placebo. It doesn't work like that, because when you're putting a needle into the foot area, for example, to treat something in the head, it doesn't connect. Is it just a placebo? Well, with the laser, people couldn't feel anything. They thought I was testing them, and yet there were still results. So that was interesting to me, that small power, very small power, was able to get astonishing effects. And I was thinking, why are we using such high-powered tools like drugs and chemo to treat disease when these low-powered tools can work? And then, of course, homeopathy came along. I saw a report last week that in Russia they're planning to make homeopathy legal in the hospitals. I'm not surprised. When I was in Russia, every hospital had low-powered lasers. Every unit had a low-powered laser. So they were into energy medicine. And they knew about healers. They often used healers in Russia, respected healers. So homeopathy, I can understand, fits into their understanding of low power affecting, able to cause healing. So we don't always need power. I'm not saying there's no place for power. There obviously is. All I'm pointing to here is that we need to stop being so infatuated by this power game, when low power seems to have astonishing effects in a different kind of way. It seems to modulate rather than insist on a result. It modulates functionality. So, I I don't use drugs very often, very, very seldom, but there's one drug that I use often, and it's called low-dose naltrexone. Now, naltrexone is a drug that's used by conventional medicine for treating addiction because it blocks endorphins. So it stops people from getting a high. Now, that's used in 45 milligram doses. I use low-dose naltrexone in 4.5 milligrams. 4.5 versus 45 milligrams. Massive difference. And yet, I've seen cures of some conditions that are like multiple sclerosis. Low-dose naltrexone for me cures multiple sclerosis, which is amazing. Low-dose, don't need power. And I'm thinking to myself, well, now that's interesting. Maybe we're using drugs even in the wrong kind of way. No, that's not fair to say. That there's a place for using them in high power, and yet there's also a place in using them in low power where we get different effects. We get more physiological effects, more healing effects when you use low power. So think about this. I mean, you can respond to a situation with anger, high power, real, trying to get your own way. Anger is a bit of a protective emotion, but nevertheless, it's very powerful. And the opposite is kind of love. And love has a different kind of effect. So what kind of effect would you want to have in a relationship? Using anger, which is going to create war, or love, which is going to create intimacy. So you can see these dynamics at work, and the tendency very often is to use one side and not the other side. And what I'm pointing to here is something actually very, very special. It's the fact that both sides are fine. And for me, it's always a question of bringing these dynamics together in some kind of way, so that, because it's not a question of force or just letting go. I need to be humble. I mean, a lot of spiritual teaching is about humility and about love. And then very often we kind of hand things over. Well, God's in charge. Let just things happen the way they do. But there is a place where we come to center point, where these two masculine and feminine energies actually operate together. With the masculine, which is force, the feminine, which is holding, loving, are able to come together, where anger becomes righteous anger, an anger that is, can I say, carried by love. An anger that's carried by love is righteous anger, because there's a place where even anger is appropriate, but it has to carry the perfume of love behind it, because then people can see what that anger is really pointing to, rather than them developing resistance. So these are the power games that we work with as a human being. We sit in that place where we can take full responsibility in the sense of being able to respond in an appropriate way in that circumstance, where the masculine and the feminine actually come together. And remember, masculine and feminine come together, we have new creation. Can we, in that place where the creative possibilities are happening from moment to moment. Have a good day.